Hello again, this is now Tarot Lesson 110 and two or three different things today. First is yesterday, Sunday the 19th, I'm recording this on Monday, but yesterday I uploaded the Tarot Reader Volume 2 to Amazon. So it's now available in Kindle and paperback. If I remember, I'll leave a link in the description down below. And if I remember as well, I'll put a JPEG image of the front cover on screen at the moment. That's part of it. Volume 2 is Tarot Lessons 14 to 26, but I began with the transcript, but I expanded it and fixed it up and added more and so on. Anyway, today, in Chinese mythology, it was FuHsi and his sister Nao who created humanity. And FuHsi and Nao both had, or each of them had, an instrument that's used by architects. And it's quite interesting. So I'm going to show you some things about that and how it, because it's a brother and sister, right? In Chinese mythology, the brother and what his instrument and his characteristics represent masculine. And so we've got kings and knights are the masculine court cards. So whatever we learn about or through FuHsi and the straight edge, which is what he used, that's going to be we're going to be able to apply that information to kings and knights to give us more detail or more background or a more complete picture of what a king and a knight represent. His sister Nao, however you pronounce it, is the feminine, and her instrument was the compass, which is different from a straight edge. And so what we learn about or to do with compasses is going to give us more information that we might be able to incorporate into a description of a queen and a page. So first we're going to look at FuHsi and Nao, and then we'll look at 2 points about how to do a reading and about what's going on during a reading. Because I want to say two things. One is you don't have to know everything. And second, you don't always have to be right. But I'd like to go into something about that. Then we'll look a bit more at court cards directly. So we begin with FuHsi. Okay, I don't know how, I think that's how you spell his name, FuHsi. So point one, his instrument was, what have I got? A square. So his instrument as an architect, or architects use squares, or this is a right angle. And so it gives you a straight edge so you can measure or so you can line things up in a particular kind of a way. So with kings and knights, maybe also we've got, what was the next thing? The horizon. So this straight line kind of reminds us of the horizon, or might remind us of our horizon. So we've got sunrise and sunset. We've got beginning and end. So kings and knights in some way can be about beginnings and endings. And maybe a knight or a king upside down means either you don't know when the right time is to begin, or you never get to the end. So again, depending on the question, it might be that somebody wants things to end, but a reverse knight or king means it's not going to end anytime soon, or it's not going to end the way you think or the way you want it to end. So think about the horizon, sunrise, sunset, and how that can relate to the meaning of a king or a knight in a spread. What does that say? Oh, this is a right angle. I used to use this as book binding, and a square in the horoscope. Okay, so the interesting thing, or one of the interesting things I think, is that's a right angle. But if you get, that's a 6-inch ruler, You put that there, you've got a second right angle. You've also got the letter F that we looked at in lesson 15, I think it was, or 16. And F is the first letter of the name of the word father, which is the masculine force. So here you've got FuHsi and the shape of the letter F, and you've got two right angles, which we can do something with. And the other point is, to do with the horoscope, is some of you may already be familiar with squares, an angle in a horoscope where you've got one planet, where's a pen, where you've got the zodiac, you've got a circle like that, and then you get one planet here and one planet there. Let's say you've got Mars and Saturn. And so they're square to each other, represented like that. And so Mars square Saturn is supposed to be bad and bring out the worst of Saturn and bring out the worst of Mars. The only problem is with a right angle, as you can see, let's say this is one street and that's another street, and you're walking this way. You can't see around corners. So the problem with squares in astrology is not that they bring out the worst in each other, but it's more that there isn't a connection. There isn't a link because you can't see around corners. So maybe we find that a king upright is doing what he's doing, but a king that's reversed, maybe this is where the square angle, the square aspect comes in. The king is reversed or the knight is reversed. There isn't a link. Normally you've got the two planets and they can see each other or they relate to each other. But with a king or a knight upside down, you would normally have two things going on, but they're not linked. There is no connection. And that's what the problem is of a reverse king or a reverse knight. There ought to be a connection. We expect a connection. We expect people to relate to each other, but they can't because they can't see each other. You can't see around corners. So that's something about FuHsi and the masculine. Then his sister now is, FuHsi has a straight edge, right? Now, on the other hand, has a compass. And you've all seen a compass, I'm sure, where you've got a pointed edge here, and you do that, and you draw a circle. It's probably too light to see, but you've seen what you know what a compass can do. So whereas FuHsi, or the masculine, is a straight edge, the feminine, queens and pages, are circles. Whereas with a straight line, you get a beginning and an end. With a circle, with a queen or a page, there's no beginning and no end. So there's a different quality or a different activity or a different understanding between kings and knights who see beginnings and ends, and pages and queens who don't see a beginning and they don't see an end either. The fact that I've got light, the fact that you hold a compass this way and you're holding it at the top and you're going down, it represents light because we've got sunlight above here beaming down onto the earth. And so the two spokes of the compass can represent light, rays of light coming down to the earth and illuminating and heating and making things pleasant and making things warm. So these, again, are ideas that are connected with queens and pages. Think of it as sunlight or rays of the sun, and how pleasant the rays of the sun are. Too much sun can burn, so maybe that's a reverse queen and a reverse page. It's too much of a good thing, or it's something that is basically good in moderation, but when you go to an extreme, it turns. It's not the same anymore. It's not as enjoyable and not as good. So we've got the compass, light from above. And 3 dimensions, because it's 3-dimensional. The right angle is 2 dimensions, left and right, or up and down, right? But a compass is 3-dimensional somehow, because you're dealing with circles and you're dealing with the plane of the earth, let's say, and you're dealing with the high point from where we hold the compass so that it comes down to earth. So with queens and pages, you're dealing with 3 dimensions, not 2, which, depending on the question and the card itself and what you're dealing with, that can be important. And the other thing is, when I was doing this, if you look at this here, this compass looks like the letter A. If this were down in the middle, it would look more like an A. But you've got the shape, you've got the 2 spokes, and you've got the thing that holds them together or keeps them a particular distance apart. And it looks like a letter A. So if we draw a circle and we start here, and we imagine we're standing over here looking at the thing here. If we draw a circle and go halfway around the circle, and imagine if we've still got a memory of this bit here, looking at this, looking here, and then you go halfway around the circle and you're over the other side, and like that, it looks like the letter M. So the feminine, queens and pages, relate to the letter M. And if you go back to lesson 15, I think it was, the difference between father and mother is that father begins with an F, partly, and mother begins with an M. So these are some things for you to consider if you want to think about, what is that telling? What is the letter M telling us? And what is the compass when it's here? And then in its own way, when it's there and we've got the letter M, we've sort of got the horizon because we've got the beginning point here and the sunset there. So it's also 2, in the same way that the straight line is a 2. So is the compass, but it's disguised, or it's 3-dimensional instead of being 2-dimensional. And again, that can be important, so that with queens and pages, maybe you need to get a third point of view. If you've got good ideas about what to do and what not to do, maybe you ask somebody else's opinion, which would be, this can be you, and this can be what to do and what not to do, and this up here can be the overview or the third opinion to get you, so that you can be sure that you're not missing something out here or here. So, sorry about the noise. That's that. The next part is this. When you're doing a reading, what are you thinking, and what kind of frame of mind are you, the reader, in? And I think a lot of the times we think we ought to know everything, because people ask us questions, or people ask the tarot questions, and we're meant to interpret them and give them an answer or give them a correct answer. But don't expect that you know everything. So somebody says, am I going to meet somebody? Maybe what you say is, okay, that's the question. Let's see what we find, which implies not that you know everything, but you and the questioner are on a journey of discovery. You're going to discover and find what the answer is. So I think it's a more relaxed starting point to accept that you don't know everything, and you're not supposed to know everything anyway. Because if you know everything, then somehow you take enjoyment away from the questioner. Because if you know everything, it's all written and it's all fated, and you can know everything in advance, why bother even going through anything? Because it's all fated. It's all going to work out the way it's going to work out anyway. So what's our role? What's our purpose? We don't have one if it's already fated. So remember, when you're the reader, you don't have to know everything. So just relax and see what you discover. For you're discovering, as is the questioner. And the second point is, don't think you have to always be right. Because again, we can people ask us questions, and is this going to happen? Am I going to meet somebody? And you don't want to tell them things that are not going to work out. And you don't want to give them just rubbish, nonsense, garbage answers. But at the same time, don't expect that you're always going to be right. because it takes the pressure off. If you're just reading what's there and doing the best that you can with what you know at that moment, and you talk and you give them information, and that's the best you can do. Because the thing is, if we think somebody can say, am I going to meet somebody, and you pick a card and you get, these are 5 court cards here, and you get, let's say it's a woman, well, am I going to meet somebody, and you get a court card coming up in the future, a king, a queen, a knight, or a page. So the answer is yes. So you talk about the kind of person they're going to meet, and maybe you go on a bit about the nature of the circumstances of the meeting. And then they don't meet somebody. So, but the thing is, you're telling them something about the future, about who they're going to meet, but they've got all sorts of things going on in their life, and all sorts of people that they know, and other people are giving them input and giving them suggestions and giving them advice and harassing them and insulting them, which is turning them into somebody else, maybe. And so let's say, am I going to meet somebody? Yes, you're going to meet the King of Batons, who is energetic and forceful and magnetic and interesting and adventurous. But then they've got a friend who tells them about this relationship they had with this type of individual and how it all went wrong and how it became too much. And so they hear about this person and they think, okay, that sounds good. Then a friend tells them about that type of person, and then suddenly they don't want to know. And that's why you don't always have to be right, because you've got the person for a certain amount of time while you're looking at cards and talking about what they mean or what they indicate or what they point to. Then the person goes back into their life where they're buffeted back and forth from different people and circumstances and reactions and stuff they hear on the news, and depression and people being miserable and things going badly at work, or things going well at work, or, there's all sorts of things going on in people's lives. So you can be right, but the person isn't always going to experience what you tell them. When I say experience, that reminds me of, it reminds me of something I added to chapter 15, I think, in the Tarot Reader Volume 2. There's an artist called Cy Twombly, and Cy said, a line is not about illustrating. A line is the actualization of experience. And so FuHsi, and a straight line, that's a line. But when you draw a line, you're not illustrating, according to Cy Twombly. You are in some way making an experience real. And that's something to think about with the masculine, with kings and knights, maybe with a circle as well. But it's just that a line is not just to illustrate. It's the actualization, the making real, the making actual of an experience or of experience. So the questioner goes back into their life and they have their experiences. And that made me think that the last thing here, the value of a reading is increasing or enlarging the questioner's understanding or the questioner's world. And that can be what you get. So you have a tarot reading, you leave the reading, or after the reading, you're bigger or more full than you were before the reading. And that can be the value that somebody gets from a tarot reading. It's not whether you're right or wrong, or whether the future works out exactly as you said it was going to work out. It's more that the person goes back into their life with a bit more understanding, or a bit more insight, or a bit more adventurousness, or a bit more whatever it happens to be, a bit more confidence maybe. So their understanding is bigger, and their world, because of that, their world is a bit bigger as well. So, kings, queens, knights, and pages. Here are some. And so I'm almost finished, but someone, when in the last video, I talked about George Williams, the artist that I knew in Switzerland, and somebody asked, what, out of curiosity, what sign was George, or what court card was he? And it made me think, and I thought, why don't you take, as an exercise, take somebody, an actor or somebody famous. And I went for groceries, and I'm on the way back, I'm thinking, Robert De Niro. Okay, so what court card is represented by Robert De Niro, or would Robert De Niro be represented by? And you think about cups, coins, swords, and batons. So which suit does Robert De Niro belong to? And you've got Robert De Niro in different movies. He was in, he tends to play hard men or killers or dominant people. I'm thinking of Heat, the character he played in Heat, and also in, I can't think of any other movie that he's been in. Oh, and The Godfather Part 2. Remember, he played the young Don Corleone. He was really good in it. So what suit will we give to Robert De Niro? He's probably not a page, right? He's probably a king. Is he a queen? Does he have sensitivity, or is he careful? Maybe in the beginning of the Godfather Part 2, where he becomes the Don because he looks after people in his neighborhood who are being given a rough time by other crooked people. So maybe there's a certain amount of a queen in that character, but at the same time, he kills the fellow in the white suit. Can't remember his name. So maybe he's a king and he takes over. And then there was a scene where there's an old woman being thrown out of her apartment, and she's got a dog, and the landlord's going to throw her out. But then Robert De Niro has a quick word with him, and so the landlord decides that she can have the place for like $1 a month, and she can keep the dog. So maybe that's him being a king. So somehow Robert De Niro, the roles that he plays, maybe he's a certain amount of a combination of the King of Batons, or maybe he's the King of Swords because he's dangerous, and the Queen of Pentacles because he looks after people and coins his money, but it also represents values. So if you take somebody famous, think about movie roles and who played what in a particular movie, and then think about what court card you would use to represent that character in that movie. And then it means that the next time the King of Batons comes up, let's see we decide this is Robert De Niro in The Godfather Part 2. So the next time the King of Batons comes up and somebody says, am I going to meet somebody? And then you get the King of Batons, you, as a reader, have an awful lot more you might talk about. You're not necessarily going to mention Robert De Niro, but it's more like you, in your mind, you've got a sense of how he would behave or how he would act or the kind of actions that he would take. He would want to dominate. He'd want to be in control, mainly because he knew what he was doing, or he was worth listening to. And so you maybe have got the King of Batons. Now in your mind, you're talking about somebody who is worth listening to. And whatever else you come up with. So maybe try that as an exercise and see what you come up with for different people, different movie roles, and the actors who play them, and what court card would represent them. Okay, so that, I think, is it for today. And I'll be back in a few days. So if you have comments or questions, leave them down below. And I'll talk to you later. Thanks for watching. Okay, bye-bye.